Welcome back, colleagues. If you're thinking about different ways that you can integrate technology into your classroom, this is going to be an exciting snapshot for you. If you are struggling with how to integrate technology, maybe you've taken a class, but you still haven't quite figured out how to use Poll Everywhere or how to fully engage students using Kahoot or other gaming technologies. Well, in this snapshot, we're not only talking about what technologies you want to consider, but we're also exploring why it's so important to integrate innovative technology into your learning experiences with your students. We are going to first take a look at our thought-provoking question, and we're going to give you some context to help you close your knowledge gaps. Our mission at Dr. Sellars Educate is that, yes, you achieve certification either as a CNE clinical, CNE novice. Some of you colleagues are on the journey for CHESI, or maybe you're just tuning in because you want to become a better nurse educator. We want to support all colleagues, no matter where they are on the journey. Okay, so first of all, we want you to take out your textbook. So Billings and Halstead is the textbook that we are using, the 6th edition. Chapter 20 is going to explore all different areas related to technology. It is titled The Connected Classroom for a good reason, because our goal is to use digital technology, various strategies to not only actively engage our learners, but also to make sure that we are preparing our learners, our future nurses at the bedside, to embrace technology. Okay, we know that more nurses are using technology, including artificial intelligence, I like to say assisted intelligence, than ever before. So how do we make this transition into using more technology a comfortable one, right? We want our nursing students to be competent, and we also want them to feel comfortable when they use technology. The one way to make sure that we do that is by integrating it into our curriculum. Okay, so chapter 20 in the 6th edition, titled The Connected Classroom. So why is it so important, and how do we equip students with tools that they can actually use in the clinical setting? Well, I want you to take a look at box 20.2. It is titled Using Mobile Devices in the Connected Classroom. Okay, so that's one strategy. How do you use the phone as an example, mobile device, in the classroom? Why is it so important? And then I want you to take a look at on page 380. It includes information about reference software, about drug guides, about health-related applications. These are all examples of resources that digital technology allows students to access very easily. Okay, and then one other place I want you to take a look at, and that is box 20.4. This is using audience response systems. Poll Everywhere is one example. Kahoot is another one. Slido. These are all great platforms to use to actively engage students in what is called ARS, or Audience Response System. Are you thinking that this all sounds like a foreign language? Okay, if that's you, what we want you to do is just take a minute to print out your study worksheet. Okay, we're not talking alphabet soup. We want you to print out the study worksheet, and we want you to write down any terminology, any terms that we discussed today, and you have no idea what that really means, because we want you to spend some time reflecting after we conclude our time together today on what concepts are muddy points for you and which ones do you feel pretty confident about, okay? And then the last step we want you to take as part of your reflective practice is to print out your candidate handbook for the exam that you are taking. Within that candidate handbook is an actual exam blueprint, okay? And it is going to include concepts that you want to make sure you clarify before you sit for the CNE exam. And ultimately, we are partnering with you and using our 7-week study plan to make sure you're closing your knowledge gaps. Okay, so if you're wondering, how does this align with the CNE exam? I want to take you to the blueprint, and we're going to actually take a look at competency 1. Okay, so this is for CNE. When you take a look at competency 1, you will see 1D says, use technologies to support the teaching learning process. So again, that's competency 1 for the CNE, and it is letter D. Okay, so that's one area. And then I also want you to take a look at competency for participating in curriculum design and evaluation of program outcomes. You're going to see many of the concepts that we are talking about in our time together today in chapter 20 as you explore content that we've discussed that is going to recommend key elements that you want to integrate into your curriculum to best support student success in that transition to nursing practice. We have a laser focus in looking at how can we better equip our nursing students, our future nursing graduates, to be practice ready. And this is just one of the strategies that we can use. All right, last resource is going to be the study workbook. So if you have the study workbook, we want you to use that as well to ensure that you are going through every page and that you are clarifying any concepts that you're not clear about as you move forward on your journey. Okay, so if you have your snapshot worksheet printed out, your study worksheet, you're going to write down today's date, whatever date you're watching the snapshot, and then objective. So now that we've talked a little bit about why we're here, right, we're going to focus on innovation, why it's so important. You're going to use chapter 20 to guide you on your journey, Billings and Halstead, 6th edition. We are finalizing our last mistake that nurse educators are making as it relates to how to prepare ourselves to create rich learning experiences for our students. So it is mistake number 12. I know our final one on the journey, and it is related to failure to create and to integrate innovative teaching strategies using technology in our classroom. And why do we do that? Okay, so I want you to think about it. Why is it that you're intimidated or afraid of integrating new technology? It could be that you are concerned about it not working properly. That's a common concern and a real one, if we were honest, because the last thing we want to happen is create a disruptive learning experience for our students when our technology doesn't work. But here's a tip I want you to remember. One way to get over that is to have a plan B. When technology doesn't work properly, what is it that you're going to do to make sure it is not a disruptor for the learning experience? So let me give you an example. I love to use Poll Everywhere. If you all have attended any of my live sessions, you already know that. And when Poll Everywhere doesn't work correctly, it can be frustrating. So what do? I already embed the thought-provoking question into the presentation slides. We use Canva for all of our content. And so because I have that thought-provoking question already embedded in the presentation slides, that is my plan B. So if all else fails and Poll Everywhere doesn't work effectively, or if there are colleagues that can't view Poll Everywhere for whatever reason, we can still have a conversation about content related to that thought-provoking question because everyone will have access to it, regardless of whether they're able to access Poll Everywhere or not. Okay, so speaking of thought-provoking question, are you all ready? All right, so let's go ahead and head over to our thought-provoking question. We are going to first take a look at mistake number 12. Okay, so if you haven't printed out the actual workbook for the 12 biggest mistakes and solutions to help you work through these challenges situations, you definitely want to take advantage of that. Okay, so that is listed right here in the description for you, so you can access all 12 of the mistakes. So hesitating to innovate, and here's what the mistake is. When educators shy away from integrating new methods, we miss those valuable opportunities to enhance engagement. So what's our solution? Staying open to those new teaching methods and technologies by attending training sessions or collaborating with tech-savvy colleagues. Experimenting, although it can be nerve-wracking, right? It can generate a lot of anxiety. So you want to balance that based on other challenges that you may be experiencing, but experimenting with innovative tools such as virtual simulations and online discussion platforms to enhance student engagement and learning outcomes. And then we have a video in the workbook for you to take a look at. Collaboration is the cornerstone of innovation to healthcare. By learning together, we heal together. We also transform together. We create richer learning experiences for our students. Okay, so that's what we're able to do. Now let's take a look at the thought-provoking question. So we have Dr. Jordan, who has heard about the flipped classroom model, but worries that it will disrupt established routines. How can Dr. Jordan effectively embrace innovation in teaching? So we have A, to pilot the flipped classroom model for a single course. We have B, consider other innovative strategies due to uncertainty. And C, fully convert all courses to a flipped model in the next semester. 2 steps you want to take when you get to every question on the C&E exam. First, you want to ask yourself, what is this question really asking me? And second of all, what is it that I know for sure about content related to this question? If you were faced with this question, what I would want you to consider first is, what is the flipped classroom model? Why is that so important? Okay, so what does it mean by flipped classroom model? And if that's not a familiar terminology or you're faced with a term that you don't understand, I want you to write that down. Okay, so you should have scratch paper or a dry erase board, a personal one to be able to take notes when you go to the testing center. And that's a time for you to take 2 steps. First of all, I want you to think about writing down any muddy points. Now, remember, you only have 3 hours to take the exam. There are 150 questions. 130 of those will be scored, 20 are unscored, but we don't know which 20 those are. So we treat every question as if it is going to be scored. Okay, so what we want you to do is when you get to a term that you don't understand, go ahead and write that down. And if it triggers other terms that you don't understand, you might want to go ahead and write that down too. It's going to allow you to purge that content from your thoughts, and hopefully you can evaluate your knowledge of that specific concept and term when you come back to it. Okay, so you should have the ability to skip questions, but again, you want to be mindful of your time. Another tip, the second tip I would say is, when you first get into the testing center, if you know there's a muddy point that makes butterflies come up in your stomach, right, that makes you really nervous, go ahead and write that down on your scratch paper. I'll give you an example. When it comes to the learning domains, I was very strong in my knowledge about cognitive, about psychomotor, but affective learning domain, not as much. So what did I do? I immediately drew my pyramid when I got to the testing center, and I wrote down verbs. Okay. Another example is with exam analysis. So that was a muddy point for me. So I wrote down some key terms to help me help trigger specific knowledge related to exam analysis when I came to that question. Okay, so you want to consider 1 or 2 of those tips to help you increase your confidence and decrease your anxiety when it comes to those questions that you may not be as knowledgeable about when you get to the exam. All right, so I want you to think about, what is the best answer? Okay, and write that down on your study worksheet, or if you just have a tablet in front of you, write that down as well. Okay, and I know some of you may be multitasking, and I know all about that, and that's okay too. What you want to consider is coming back to this content when you do have a moment to sit down in front of a computer with your study worksheet to help you stay focused. All right, so now let's go back to our presentation. And we're going to further explore what this all means when it comes to identifying not only why the innovation is so important in our learning experiences that we're developing for our students, but how does it align with those evidence-based practices that we know are mentioned in Chapter 20 of Billings and Halstead, and we also know it's aligned with Competency 1 as well as Competency 4 for curriculum. Overcoming this hesitation for better learning is a key step in the process. We can become comfortable with the teaching strategies that we develop. We know that repetition is also an asset that we bring into the learning experience. So we want to balance the two. How do we leverage the repetition, right? That comfort level that we have as it relates to being able to teach not only the content, but being comfortable in the strategies that we've used before. So we want to innovate nursing, and we do that by embracing change. We know that's really important because we know change is the constant that is consistent in healthcare and in nursing. There's always changes that are happening. We want to keep up with the pace of that change in our curriculum to ensure we are properly equipping our nursing students, our future nurses, with the essential skills that they need in order to adapt. 12%, okay, that's a large percentage for our nurses that are involved in using AI-assisted computer generation technology for patient handoffs. I know you probably thought 12% sounds low. Well, it's a large percentage considering where we were 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. And this is data that was collected in a survey by National Nurses United. You can see right here the citation, and it was actually in 2024. We'll also put that link in the description so you'll have access to it. Here was the question though. How accurate is the assistance that is being given by artificial intelligence? Well, there's some questions, and actually there's some discrepancies in how the nurse actually assessed the patient and the documentation they had versus what was generated through the assisted artificial intelligence that was utilized. So how do we overcome these innovation barriers, and why is it important? Well, we know that part of it is practice readiness. The other component, though, when we consider our resistance associated with integrating innovation, is that it can actually hinder nursing education, and it can negatively influence patient outcomes based on our students' inability to engage in clinical judgment practices that are essential, as we know, when it comes to the safe delivery of patient care. 10,000 hours. That's a lot of hours when you think about it. That's equivalent to 6 or so years of us being in a full-time position as a nurse educator. Repetition is our friend. However, we also want to make sure that we are integrating those innovative strategies, right? And keeping some of the old, but refreshing our content with some of the new. Malcolm Gladwell told us in his book Outliers, based on the research that he had done over years, is that it takes 10,000 hours of deliberate practice to master a skill. Now, this term deliberate practice is an important part of the statement because this says that there must be quality associated with those 10,000 hours. When we look at today's dynamic landscape and the challenges that students are faced with, we know, and nurses, we know that technology is a constant that is not going away. We have to integrate different elements into our curriculum to best prepare our future nurses for the dynamics associated with artificial intelligence, associated with burnout and the stress associated with workload. The political divide is probably more heightened than it's been in our lifetime. How do we embrace and integrate these challenges that our nurses and nursing students are being faced with every day? The financial challenges, right? We think about patients' inability to pay their bills. We think about the capacity issues that healthcare organizations continue to see. And it's not just flu season anymore, right? It's year round, whether that's associated with bed capacity and throughput issues, or it could be associated with the actual staffing challenges. We are taking a chance when we take the leap to transition into change. We know that change is inevitable. How do we adapt our curriculum? How do we adapt our culture to embrace change? Well, it starts with using evidence-based practices, right? We want to embrace creative innovation based on what the evidence says is most effective. It is a risk, right? When we take that leap, the key is to not take the leap alone. We want to partner with colleagues within our nursing program to be able to take that leap together. We also want to engage with our students to find out from them what works and what doesn't work. So gathering that feedback continuously through formative feedback, which can include discussions with our students, simulation-based learning approaches where we are promoting and enhancing those critical thinking skills that we know are essential for students to develop in the nursing program. That interprofessional collaborative learning process is triggered through teamwork. So even though students may be challenged with group work, let's equip them with tools, with strategies to help them create a more positive group project experience than they've ever had before. So one strategy we can use is sharing tips and tricks with them about how to work together well. Then there's 3 steps that we want to talk about. First of all is identifying a worksheet that they can use, almost a checklist regarding who does what, okay? And then second of all, encouraging students to have a meeting, right? In the very beginning to talk about what is going to be the schedule, what's going to be those specific timelines based on workload responsibilities, right? And we want to help decrease that anxiety with our students when it comes to working together as a team by establishing some of these standards. And then tip number 3 is to have a private discussion forum that the group can really collaborate and discuss their ideas, connect with each other instead of just using email. All right, so what's your number? Are you feeling lost? Was a lot of that alphabet soup? Or do you feel like you're at a 5 where you're ready to teach these concepts because they are so familiar to you and you feel like you have a really good grasp of the content that we discussed? info@drsellarseducate.com is the best way to reach us. And now we want to wrap up and taking a look at that thought-provoking question. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to write down what you think is the best answer. And let's see how close you came to that correct option. All right, so if you chose A as the correct option, you are correct. So give yourselves a round of applause. Now let's talk about why. Well, when we pilot a flipped classroom approach for a single course or unit, it allows for testing without major disruptions. One of the biggest challenges and barriers to learning is when we integrate technology and it's not aligned to a learning objective, right? So we don't want to just create fun experiences for our students. Yes, it's fun, it's exciting, but we got to make sure it's connected to a specific learning outcome or learning objective. And then the second barrier that can cause disruption and not align with our goal, which is to facilitate learning, to be that coach with our students on that journey as they go through all 4 phases of Kolb's experiential learning theory, is to not be prepared in using that technology. Okay, so decrease in disruption by increasing our competence and our comfort with using technology is a key step in the process. All right, and what else about these options that made the other 2 incorrect? So even though B might have sounded like a good option, we don't want to avoid limiting growth and student engagement. So avoiding using the flipped classroom model because of your uncertainty isn't the best option, right? We want to embrace it. And just like those 10,000 hours that Malcolm Gladwell talks about, the first time, the second time, even the third time that we embrace a new technology, it may not be exactly how we plan for it, but we get better every single time. And then C is not the best option because clearly full conversion without preparation is going to cause a lot of confusion. And we don't want that with our students, right? We don't want to create confusion. We want to create a learning experience that is going to advance their competencies, increase their knowledge, and at the same time, also allow them to advance their clinical judgment skills and their critical thinking skills. Okay, so how did you do? I want you to reflect on what content about the thought-provoking question maybe attracted you to the incorrect option. And then I want you to act. Okay, so you're taking a pause, right? Taking a little bit of a time out to reflect on what attracted you to the incorrect option or even the correct option. And then we want you to act by reviewing content in chapter 20, and that's going to be in the 6th edition of Billings and Halstead. Our mission here at Dr. Sellars Educate is very simple. It is to support all colleagues that are on the journey to CNE success. We know the journey can be challenging, so we want you to reach out and not go on this journey alone. 98 to 100% of nurse educator colleagues that join us on the journey to achieve success are successful when following our 7-week study plan. We look forward to seeing you in our next snapshot. Reach out if you have questions, info@drsellarseducate.com. We look forward to seeing you in a future snapshot.